Hey everyone, this is MSilb of MSilb Analytics here to give you your Week 1 daily fantasy sports ratings for the NFL. So if you saw, I posted my season-long Score Plus ratings for fantasy football. So these Week 1 ratings are largely based on that. However, they are adjusted for the player's matchup, and we also give a value for their price on FanDuel and DraftKings. So this way you can get the most value for your lineup and win your. Quick disclaimer, this is not an exact science. There's a lot of variability, especially in daily fantasy sports. Your picks are your decisions, not mine. So for quarterbacks, I have my setup very similar to what I posted online, where I have on the left side of my screen my daily fantasy sports spreadsheet, and on the right side I have my season-long spreadsheet. So what I want to do is go through and just kind of compare what we see and see where the value is. So for quarterbacks, it's interesting that this kind of follows very closely to the season-long ratings. I think this is largely because the higher quarterbacks I've listed in season-long ratings aren't the traditional, popular quarterbacks who have the high salaries. So the high salary at the top, Drew Brees with $8,700 on FanDuel, $8,100 on DraftKings. He's the #1 quarterback for season long. He's facing Oakland, which is the 11th worst passing defense last season. So should be a pretty good matchup for him. Still the best value by a good amount. So I'll go with Drew Brees in a lot of my leagues. You also have Carson Palmer against the 18th worst defense of New England. Philip Rivers is a very tough matchup against Kansas City, but he's priced a little lower than most other quarterbacks. Looking at favorable matchups, Matt Ryan against Tampa Bay at $7,600 on FanDuel and $7,100 on DraftKings. The best matchup would be Derek Carr for Oakland against New Orleans, who was the worst passing defense last year. He's priced at $7,700 on FanDuel and $7,300 on DraftKings, so about $1,800 less than Drew Brees on each site. Aaron Rodgers and Cam Newton are both very highly priced and don't project too well for me. However, Cam Newton yesterday had a pretty good game against Denver, so take it as it is. So for quarterbacks, I'm playing mostly Drew Brees. You can target Derek Carr as well. So the other thing I tried to do, so the two big rookie quarterbacks are Carson Wentz for Philadelphia and Dak Prescott for Dallas. Both are priced pretty much at the minimum on both FanDuel and DraftKings. It's hard to say what they'll really do. Dak Prescott, of course, made headlines with his great preseason. Looking at matchups, Dak Prescott is going against the Giants, who were the 3rd worst passing defense last year, so could be a good matchup for him. Definitely a risk taking a first-time starter. However, he's priced low on FanDuel, priced low on DraftKings. So I'm not building all of my lineups around Dak Prescott, but I've definitely taken a flyer on him just because it could potentially be huge value, and there's really no way to predict that. Carson Wentz, Philly's playing against Washington this week. Washington was the 10th worst pass defense last year. So again, could be a potential matchup, but if you're going to go with the rookie quarterback, I lean more towards Dak Prescott. If you want to go for more experience, more of a sure thing, I'm looking at Drew Brees. For running backs, we see some movement. So the top of running backs for a Score Plus are Le'Veon Bell, who's obviously out, Jamal Charles, Adrian Peterson, Devontae Freeman, and Doug Martin. However, if we go to the weekly stats, we have Doug Martin at the top, followed by Jamal Charles, who's questionable for Week 1. I'd stay away from him for now. If you want to go for Kansas City, who plays against San Diego this week. And San Diego was the 5th worst rushing defense last year. Spencer Ware or Charcandrick West could be a good pick. I'm going with Spencer Ware. From all the reports I've read, he seems to be the guy if Jamal Charles is indeed out. So I have Todd Gurley, Le'Veon Bell, suspended, of course. Mark Ingram is interesting, receiving running back. Todd Gurley is intriguing. He's a high price tag. There's a lot of concerns about LA being a one-dimensional offense. They're facing San Francisco, who's the 2nd worst rushing defense last year. He could be good. I'm still worried about that high price tag. Ezekiel Elliott, I tried to replace him by putting him in for what Darren McFadden's stats were for last year. Dallas is against the Giants, who are the 8th worst rushing defense last year. Ezekiel Elliott's looked good in the preseason, but similar to his teammate Dak Prescott, you don't know what you're getting. He's priced pretty highly. He's ranked highly in every fantasy league. So again, I'm taking a shot on Ezekiel in some lineups, but for the most part, I'm not building my core lineups around him. I like Latavius Murray a lot this week. He's priced middle-low range, $6,600 on FanDuel and $5,600 on DraftKings. Oakland's matched up against New Orleans this week. New Orleans was the third worst rushing defense last year. He could have a big game. I think a combination of Latavius Murray and Doug Martin's a pretty solid mid-range price running back lineup. Other intriguing running backs, Thomas Rawls against Miami, D'Angelo Williams in place for Le'Veon Bell against Washington. So wide receivers, there's a lot to pick from for sure. Going from the Score Plus ratings, the top 3 are the same, Antonio Brown, Julio Jones, and Brandon Marshall also being the top DFS picks for this week. Brandon Marshall being the lowest price tag of the 3 of them. There's a few mid to low range salary receivers that jump out to me. Most notably, Michael Crabtree making a huge jump. He makes the big jump up to 6th for this week. He's going against New Orleans defense, which has kind of been the theme. 7th worst receiving defense last year. Crabtree as the 17th best wide receiver for the season. He has a low price tag of $6,100 on FanDuel and $5,500 on DraftKings. He's a good guy to pop into your lineup and get some higher price guys. Also for good value, there's a clump of Doug Baldwin, Jordan Matthews, and Eric Decker. range from 6,600 to 6,900 on DraftKings, and similarly on FanDuel. Travis Benjamin is a low price tag of 5,600 for San Diego. Marvin Jones is my sleeper for season-long fantasy, priced at 5,500 on FanDuel and 4,600 on DraftKings. Going for Detroit with the absence of Calvin Johnson. Going against Indianapolis, who was the 6th worst passing defense last year. Another guy, possibly package Marvin Jones, Michael Crabtree together, and really save some dollars to get value and spend high elsewhere. Now it's a tight end, which provides opportunities for great value as well. So the top season-long tight ends, we have Delaney Walker, Jordan Reed, Rob Gronkowski, Greg Olsen, Gary Barnidge. But then if you flip over to the daily fantasy sports, you get Jason Witten, Colby Fleener, then you get Delaney Walker, Jordan Reed, and Gary Barnidge. So because of that, I'm targeting Jason Witten and Colby Fleener as my two tight ends. A decent amount cheaper salary than the top season-long tight end group. Jason Witten coming in at 5,500 on FanDuel and 4,100 on DraftKings. He's against the Giants, who are their second worst defense against tight ends. Similarly, Colby Fleener, who I put in for Ben Watson's place last year, since Ben Watson has left New Orleans to go to Baltimore, and Colby Fleener is coming in. New Orleans is going against Oakland. Oakland was the third worst defense against tight ends last year, and Colby Fleener is 5,400 on FanDuel and 4,900 on DraftKings. Both of these guys, again, plug them in for good value, save a couple $1,000s on tight end, but get your value elsewhere. For defenses, I don't have any analytics or rankings for that yet. That'll be coming shortly. Just looking at matchups, I like LA against San Francisco, and I also like Houston against Chicago. Both are kind of mid-upper as far as pricing goes. For kickers, just get a starting kicker with whatever monies you have left. Don't hurt yourself over picking a kicker. So that's it for week one. Again, this is mostly based off of the season projections. In the future, I do want to get a week-by-week model that's probably more accurate and more relevant. Hopefully this helps you out a lot. Ask me questions, give me feedback. I want to talk fantasy football. Let's go win.